Hello and good afternoon. My name's Don Arleth and you're watching Midday Report here on TVP World. So let's get started. EU foreign ministers are meeting in Brussels today to discuss the latest developments in European security, including the recent railway sabotage in Poland. Now, the meeting takes place as reports emerge of an alleged peace proposal for Ukraine agreed between Washington and Moscow. Our EU correspondent Angela Skujins has the latest on both European reactions to these reports and Poland's response to Russian hybrid warfare activity.
The various foreign ministers attending this meeting in the Belgian capital on Thursday have ruled out the fact that they have been consulted on a reported peace plan brokered by the United States and the Kremlin. However, if the peace plan does exist, aiming to find an end to Russia's bloody invasion of Ukraine, that Ukraine as well as Europe need to be consulted and have a seat at the negotiating table. Now, Axios, a news outlet, is reporting that this peace plan is supposedly being written between the United States and Moscow. It covers 4 areas such as security guarantees for Ukraine, as well as Europe's role in the ongoing peace efforts. However, it is unclear whether this peace plan even exists. We did hear the EU top diplomat Kaja Kallas state that she has not been consulted on any such proposal. However, if Russia wants to end its war in Ukraine, it can do so.
Putin could end this war immediately if he just stopped bombing civilians and killing the people. But we haven't seen any concessions on the Russian side.
Hybrid warfare is also on the agenda. We asked the Swedish Foreign Minister Maria Stenengard what the EU's response should be to these rail sabotage attacks occurring over the weekend in Poland. She says the European Union needs to respond quickly. Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski also gave us a state of play regarding this investigation. He stated that 2 individuals with alleged links to the Kremlin have been identified for being responsible for the attack. They have thus fled to Belarus. He called for the European Union cracking down harder on these individuals, while also outlining what Poland as a European country is doing so to fight the scourge of hybrid warfare.
I have already taken the decision to close down Russia's last remaining consulate in Poland, in Gdańsk. We will restrict further the movement of Russian diplomats in Poland, and we will send before the end of the year $100 million for Ukraine for armaments from the United States to Ukraine in support of the Pearl program. But this is just what I'm doing as the foreign ministers. This will go further.
Now, the Lithuanian Foreign Minister Kęstutis Budrys also called for the European Union to go harder against Belarus, applying further sanctions. He stated the hybrid warfare occurring in his country, referring to those balloons full of cigarettes flying over Lithuanian airspace, causing the shutdown of major airports. Hopefully, we're going to hear an outcome from this meeting at the 4 p.m. press conference regarding the speculation surrounding that US-Russia peace plan, as well as what to do with this hybrid warfare. Angela Skujins from Brussels for TVP World.
According to reports from several American media outlets, unofficial sources claim that Donald Trump has approved a 28-point plan to end the war in Ukraine.
A newly reported peace proposal, allegedly drafted quietly between envoys from Washington and Moscow, has landed in Kyiv like cold shock. According to US media, Donald Trump has reportedly approved a 28-point plan that would require Ukraine to surrender territory it still controls and drastically reduce the size of its military. It mirrors earlier frameworks dismissed by Kyiv as political suicide and arrives as Russian missiles continue to tear through Ukrainian cities. Neither the Kremlin nor the White House has confirmed the plan, reportedly drafted by Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff and the Kremlin advisor Kirill Dmitriev. But on Wednesday night, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio offered what sounded like a thinly veiled nod to the leak.
Ending a complex and deadly war such as the one in Ukraine requires an extensive exchange of serious and realistic ideas. and achieving a durable peace will require both sides to agree to difficult but necessary concessions.
In Kyiv, these concessions have triggered anger. Many residents say they are appalled by the reported terms, especially any deal that forces Ukraine to shrink its army or cede land seized by Russia.
I do not consider these conditions acceptable. And I do not think that even if such an agreement is conditionally reached at the level of heads of state, that it will be accepted by the people, by the military, and those who have already given and are giving a lot for this. I do not think that Zelensky will sign any peace agreements on these terms for several reasons. First, he is populist enough not to do this. He knows that this will be a very unpopular thing in Ukraine. And second, he is, despite everything, too patriotic to do anything like that.
I do not know if Zelensky will agree to such terms. I hope not. Of course, these conditions are not acceptable for Ukraine. I believe that Ukraine should return to its 1991 borders at a minimum.
Experts say the broader context matters. Competing peace frameworks have circulated for months. From Kyiv, from Europe, and now, allegedly, from Washington and Moscow. None have gained traction because Russia insists on maximalist terms that Ukraine considers impossible.
From my perspective, I would say that nothing new. And currently, I would say that after the announcements came from Ukraine side as well as European side in terms of frameworks as well, devoted to ceasefire or peace plan, I think that it's like a response made by Russian diplomacy in terms of trying to hold the initiative in diplomatic track.
Meanwhile, senior Pentagon officials have arrived in Kyiv for talks aimed at efforts to end the war, but with no confirmed timing or agenda. With Russian missiles still pounding Ukrainian cities and reported proposals demanding Ukraine shrink itself into submission, many here believe the only viable peace plan remains the oldest one: full sovereignty, full borders, and no backroom deals.
Russia continues its brutal campaign of war crimes against Ukrainian civilians, this time targeting the city of Ternopil in the western part of the country. Dozens of people are dead and many more are injured or trapped beneath the rubble as Russian missiles rain down on unsuspecting residents, causing two high-rise buildings to partially collapse.
Rescue workers in Ternopil in western Ukraine pay their respects early on Thursday to those killed in devastating Russian airstrikes. Dozens lost their lives and were injured in the assaults which badly damaged two high-rise blocks a day earlier. The search for survivors continued round the clock.
All night long, our rescuers worked in Ternopil, and search and rescue operations are still ongoing. 22 people are still missing. The effort to find them continues. More than 230 first responders from 9 regions of Ukraine have been deployed. In some areas, work can be only done by hand because of the severe destruction and fragmentation of the structures. This complicates the search.
It's an anxious time for many people.
My great-grandmother lived here and she is still under the rubble. She has not been recovered yet. Yesterday I went to the morgue twice for identification. They showed another neighbor who looked similar, but it was not my great-grandmother.
Late on Wednesday, rescue crews lifted one man from the rubble. Crews regularly halt work in the hope they can hear other survivors.
As you can hear, the equipment ceased its operation. A moment of silence has been declared to be able to hear possible survivors under the rubble. Around 30 minutes ago, we made contact with a young person in their 20s. The rescuers keep constant contact with him.
Russia has been systematically attacking power and heat infrastructure, while denying it deliberately targets civilians. But as the cleanup continues here and elsewhere, Ukrainians are left wondering who will be next.
Poland's foreign ministry delivered a diplomatic note to Belarus's chargé in Warsaw on Wednesday, formally requesting the extradition of 2 Ukrainian nationals suspected of carrying out sabotage for Russia, a ministry spokesperson told the Polish press agency.
Poland is demanding that Belarus extradites 2 Ukrainians it accuses of carrying out a failed sabotage attempt on behalf of Russia this past weekend that could have killed or maimed rail passengers. Poland's foreign ministry said on Thursday the request was delivered to the Belarusian chargé d'affaires in Warsaw the previous day. Prime Minister Donald Tusk said the incident is the most serious security situation Poland has faced since the outbreak of full-scale war in Ukraine.
It could have resulted in a serious catastrophe with casualties. That's why I'm saying that the line has been crossed. And this is a very, very serious matter.
Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski said Russia tried to stage a deadly rail attack that could have cost many lives.
This time, this wasn't just sabotage like before. It was an act of state-sponsored terrorism with a clear intention to cause human casualties. We will respond to this, and not just diplomatically.
Prime Minister Donald Tusk has discussed the sabotage attempts with German Chancellor Friedrich Merz via telephone.
The Chancellor condemned this attack in the strongest terms and reaffirmed Germany's solidarity with Poland.
Polish troops are now on high alert, patrolling rail tracks in the wake of last weekend's sabotage operations. In all, around 10,000 soldiers will protect critical infrastructure to counteract acts of sabotage and improve the safety of Polish citizens.
At midnight on Wednesday, Lithuania reopened 2 of its border crossings with Belarus. The checkpoints were previously closed in response to a series of airspace incursions involving weather balloons carrying contraband cigarettes crossing into Lithuanian airspace from Belarus.
The circumstances have changed, and the restrictions on crossing the state border issued on October 29th by resolution number 733 of the Lithuanian government are no longer needed to ensure domestic security.
I was at the other crossing, but when I was driving there, I didn't know it was closed. So I arrived there at around 5:30 p.m. and then I moved here because it's closer for me. And since I knew I had to wait until midnight for it to open, there was no point in driving an extra 100 kilometers. That's why I'm here. I've probably been waiting around 8 hours now.
Our vacation started when the border was still open and ended just as it reopened. Today we are already heading to work, so for us there were no inconveniences. But I know that for others it was inconvenient to have to return home via Poland.
Dozens of people have been injured in the Czech Republic after 2 passenger trains collided near the city of České Budějovice in the south of the country.
2 trains collided head-on on the same track near České Budějovice on Thursday. Though the damage to the trains may not look extensive, dozens were injured. 7 rescue crews and a helicopter were dispatched to the accident.
We have information that a total of 50 people were traveling on the trains, 30 of whom were injured either seriously or slightly, and were taken to hospitals in České Budějovice and nearby towns.
The causes of the crash remain unknown, but preliminary information indicates that one of the conductors may have ignored a stop signal.
An investigation into the case will be conducted, and I assume that the railway company and the railway administration will try to get this line back into operation as quickly as possible.
The site of the crash is located some 130 kilometers south of the capital city, Prague. The line where the accident occurred is not equipped with the signaling and safety mechanism called the European Train Control System.
The World Cup playoff draw at FIFA headquarters in Zurich has just concluded. Let's check in on what we know so far. The Polish national football team now knows that their rivals for the spot in the 2026 World Cup. In the playoffs, the Polish footballers, under the leadership of captain and FC Barcelona star Robert Lewandowski, will face Albania on home grass. If victorious, they will then have to play against Ukraine or Sweden. The last time Poland played Albania in 2023, they lost the game. However, the Polish squad have won 3 out of the 4 of its matches against the Albanian team. Overall, 16 teams will play in the match in March for their chance to compete in the World Cup. Some of the teams fighting in the playoffs are Italy, Denmark, Wales, Kosovo, and Ukraine. The World Cup tournament will be held next year across the United States, Canada, and Mexico. And that concludes this edition of Midday Report. Thanks for joining us, and stay with us for more here on TVP World.